Hi there, you guys. Hope you're doing well today. You made it through the first full week, so here we are. And I debated about doing a video for a Saturday, but then I thought, why not, right? Because we still need to hear the story, and Saturdays are kind of like the other days now, so we'll just keep reading. But the first thing I thought we would look at today is a sculpture. So here we are. Let me scroll up here. So here we are at the Musée Rodin. This is actually in Paris, France. Rodin was a French sculptor at the end of the 1800s, beginning of the early 1900s. And you definitely know him from this. This is The Thinker. He sculpted that. But obviously also many other things. And an interesting little tidbit is that the largest, he lived in France, and the largest museum of Rodin sculptures is in Paris. And the second largest in the world is in Philadelphia. So that's pretty close to us. So if you're ever down there, you can take a look at some of Rodin's sculptures. It's down the road from the Philly Museum of Art. So the one I want to look at today is called the Cathedral. And this is also one of his famous ones. And if you just kind of look at it, you see the two hands there kind of touching each other. And there it is, the cathedral, right? But as you know, the word cathedral means church. It means a large church, and traditionally large cities might have one. And in these large churches, you would have towers kind of reaching up towards the sky, reaching up towards the heavens. And there was a lot of space inside when you walk in a cathedral, a lot of, vaulting kind of architecture. And so Rodin represents this with two hands touching, and there is that space in between them, right? But what's really interesting about this one is it's two right hands. So it's not one person. It's not one person alone. It's not one person maybe praying by themselves or whatever. It's two right hands. So what that means is either it's two people, or the original title of this was the Ark of the Covenant. So maybe it's the hand of God and the hand of humans connecting. But either way, it symbolizes our need for connection with each other, and connection maybe with God, and maybe both, of course, at the same time. So let me show you some other views of this. Let me get myself out of the way. So this is the Philadelphia Museum of Art webpage, and there's another view of it. So Rodin's sculptures often were made in several copies because once the mold was made, it could be kind of copied and redone, and even in different mediums. So you see that sometimes. Let me see if I can find another view of this for you. Right here. There's another angle of it. And there's another angle of it. So you see how Rodin allowed for that space in the middle to kind of imitate that idea that you find in cathedrals, that open air kind of vaulting up towards the heavens. And then this idea of we need connection to something greater than ourselves, and connection maybe with each other, which of course that's the hardest thing right now, right? We're not connected with each other, but we can be in other ways, and just to show that we're here for each other. And of course, we can always find that quiet space where we feel connected to something larger than ourselves. That's always available to us if we quiet ourselves and kind of reach that space. So that's your inspiration for today, a sculpture. And let's go over to Tuesdays with Morrie. So here we are back with Tuesdays with Morrie. If you are just jumping in now, feel free to go back to the earlier dates to kind of get the whole beginning of it. But otherwise, we're just going to pick up right where we left off yesterday. By the start of my senior year, I have taken so many sociology classes, I am only a few credits shy of a degree. Morrie suggests that I try an honors thesis. Me? I ask. What would I write about? What interests you? He says. We bat it back and forth until we finally settle on, of all things, sports. I begin a year-long project on how football in America has become ritualistic, almost a religion, an opiate for the masses. I have no idea that this is training for my future career. I only know it gives me another once-a-week session with Morrie. And with his help, by spring I have a 112-page thesis, researched, footnoted, documented, and neatly bound in black leather. I show it to Morrie with the pride of a little leaguer rounding the bases on his first home run. Congratulations, Morrie says. I grin as he leafs through it, and I glance around his office. The shelves of books, the hardwood floor, the throw rug, the couch. I think to myself that I have sat just about everywhere there is to sit in this room. I don't know, Mitch, Morrie muses, adjusting his glasses as he reads. With work like this, we may have to get you back here for grad school. Yeah, right, I say. I snicker, but the idea is momentarily appealing. Part of me is scared of leaving school. Part of me wants to go desperately. Tension of opposites. I watch Morrie as he reads my thesis and wonder what the big world will be like out there. The Audio-Visual, Part 2. The Nightline show had done a follow-up story on Morrie, partly because the reception for the first show had been so strong. This time, when the cameramen and producers came through the door, they already felt like family, and Koppel himself was noticeably warmer. There was no feeling out process, no interview before the interview. As warm-up, Koppel and Morrie exchanged stories about their childhood backgrounds. Koppel spoke of growing up in England, and Morrie spoke of growing up in the Bronx. Morrie wore a long-sleeved blue shirt. He was almost always chilly, even when it was 90 degrees outside. But Koppel removed his jacket and did the interview in shirt and tie. It was as if Morrie were breaking him down, one layer at a time. You look fine, Koppel said when the tape began to roll. That's what everybody tells me, Morrie said. You sound fine. That's what everybody tells me. So how do you know things are going downhill? Morrie sighed. Nobody can know it but me, Ted, but I know it. And as he spoke, it became obvious. He was not waving his hands to make a point as freely as he had in their first conversation. He had trouble pronouncing certain words. The L sound seemed to get caught in his throat. In a few more months, he might no longer speak at all. Here's how my emotions go, Morrie told Koppel. When I have people and friends here, I'm very up. The loving relationships maintain me. But there are days when I am depressed. Let me not deceive you. I see certain things going and I feel a sense of dread. What am I going to do without my hands? What happens when I can't speak? Swallowing, I don't care so much about. So they feed me through a tube, so what? But my voice, my hands, they're such an essential part of me. I talk with my voice. I gesture with my hands. This is how I give to people. How will you give when you can no longer speak? Koppel asked. Morrie shrugged. Maybe I'll have everyone ask me yes or no questions. It was such a simple answer that Koppel had to smile. He asked Morrie about silence. He mentioned a dear friend Morrie had, Morrie Stein, who had first sent Morrie's aphorisms to the Boston Globe. They had been together at Brandeis since the early 60s. Now Stein was going deaf. Koppel imagined the two men together one day, one unable to speak, the other unable to hear. What would that be like? We will hold hands, Morrie said, and there will be a lot of love passing between us. Ted, We've had 35 years of friendship. You don't need speech or hearing to feel that." Before the show ended, Morrie read Koppel one of the letters he'd received. Since the first Nightline program, there had been a great deal of mail. One particular letter came from a school teacher in Pennsylvania who taught a special class of 9 children. Every child in the class had suffered the death of a parent. "Here's what I sent her back," Morrie told Koppel, perching his glasses gingerly on his nose and ears. "Dear Barbara, I was very moved by your letter. I feel the work you have done with the children who have lost a parent is very important. I also lost a parent at an early age." Suddenly, with the camera still humming, Morrie adjusted the glasses. He stopped, bit his lip, and began to choke up. Tears fell down his nose. "I lost my mother when I was a child, and it was quite a blow to me. I wish I'd had a group like yours where I would have been able to talk about my sorrows. I would have joined your group because," his voice cracked, "because I was so lonely." "Morrie," Koppel said, "that was 70 years ago your mother died. The pain still goes on?" "You bet," Morrie whispered. The Professor. He was 8 years old. A telegram came from the hospital, and since his father, a Russian immigrant, could not read English, Morrie had to break the news, reading his mother's death notice like a student in front of the class. "We regret to inform you," he began. On the morning of the funeral, Morrie's relatives came down the steps of his tenement building on the poor Lower East Side of Manhattan. The men wore dark suits, the women wore veils. The kids in the neighborhood were going off to school, and as they passed, Morrie looked down, ashamed that his classmates would see him this way. One of his aunts, a heavy-set woman, grabbed Morrie and began to wail. "What will you do without your mother? What will become of you?" Morrie burst into tears. His classmates ran away. At the cemetery, Morrie watched as they shoveled dirt into his mother's grave. He tried to recall the tender moments they had shared when she was alive. She had operated a candy store until she got sick, after which she mostly slept or sat by the window, looking frail and weak. Sometimes she would yell out for her son to get her some medicine, and young Morrie, playing stickball in the street, would pretend he did not hear her. In his mind, he believed he could make the illness go away by ignoring it. How else can a child confront death? Morrie's father, whom everyone called Charlie, had come to America to escape the Russian army. He worked in the fur business, but was constantly out of a job. Uneducated and barely able to speak English, he was terribly poor, and the family was on public assistance much of the time. Their apartment was a dark, cramped, depressing place behind the candy store. They had no luxuries, no car. Sometimes, to make money, Morrie and his younger brother, David, would wash porch steps together for a nickel. After their mother's death, the 2 boys were sent off to a small hotel in the Connecticut woods where several families shared a large cabin and a communal kitchen. The fresh air might be good for the children, the relatives thought. Morrie and David had never seen so much greenery, and they ran and played in the fields. One night after dinner, they went for a walk, and it began to rain. Rather than come inside, they splashed around for hours. The next morning, when they awoke, Morrie hopped out of bed. "Come on," he said to his brother. "Get up." "I can't." "What do you mean?" David's face was panicked. "I can't move." He had polio. Of course, the rain did not cause this, but a child Morrie's age could not understand that. For a long time, as his brother was taken back and forth to a special medical home and was forced to wear braces on his legs, which left him limping, Morrie felt responsible. So in the mornings he went to synagogue by himself because his father was not a religious man, and he stood among the swaying men in their long black coats, and he asked God to take care of his dead mother and his sick brother. And in the afternoons he stood at the bottom of the subway steps and hawked magazines, turning whatever money he made over to his family to buy food. In the evenings he watched his father eat in silence, hoping for, but never getting, a show of affection, communication, warmth. At 9 years old, he felt as if the weight of a mountain were on his shoulders. But a saving embrace came into Morrie's life the following year, his new stepmother, Eva. She was a short Romanian immigrant with plain features, curly brown hair, and the energy of 2 women. She had a glow that warmed the otherwise murky atmosphere his father created. She talked when her new husband was silent. She sang songs to the children at night. Morrie took comfort in her soothing voice, her school lessons, her strong character. When his brother returned from the medical home, still wearing leg braces from the polio, the 2 of them shared a roll-away bed in the kitchen of their apartment, and Eva would kiss them good night. Morrie waited on those kisses like a puppy waits on milk, and he felt, deep down, that he had a mother again. There was no escaping their poverty, however. They lived now in the Bronx, in a 1-bedroom apartment in a red brick building on Tremont Avenue, next to an Italian beer garden where the old men played bocce on summer evenings. Because of the Depression, Morrie's father found even less work in the fur business. Sometimes when the family sat at the dinner table, all Eva could put out was bread. "What else is there?" David would ask. "Nothing else," she would answer. When she tucked Morrie and David into bed, she would sing to them in Yiddish. Even the songs were sad and poor. There was one about a girl trying to sell her cigarettes. "Please buy my cigarettes. They are dry, not wet by rain. Take pity on me, take pity on me." Still, despite their circumstances, Morrie was taught to love and to care, and to learn. Eva would accept nothing less than excellence in school because she saw education as the only antidote to their poverty. She herself went to night school to improve her English. Morrie's love for education was hatched in her arms. He studied at night by the lamp at the kitchen table, and in the mornings he would go to synagogue to say Kaddish, the memorial prayer for the dead, for his mother. He did this to keep her memory alive. Incredibly, Morrie had been told by his father never to talk about her. Charlie wanted young David to think Eva was his natural mother. It was a terrible burden to Morrie. For years, the only evidence Morrie had of his mother was the telegram announcing her death. He had hidden it the day it arrived. He would keep it the rest of his life. When Morrie was a teenager, his father took him to a fur factory where he worked. This was during the Depression. The idea was to get Morrie a job. He entered the factory and immediately felt as if the walls had closed in around him. The room was dark and hot, the windows covered with filth, and the machines were packed tightly together, churning like train wheels. The fur hairs were flying, creating a thickened air, and the workers, sewing the pelts together, were bent over their needles as the boss marched up and down the rows, screaming for them to go faster. Morrie could barely breathe. He stood next to his father, frozen with fear, hoping the boss wouldn't scream at him, too. During lunch break, his father took Morrie to the boss and pushed him in front of him, asking if there was any work for his son. But there was barely enough work for the adult laborers, and no one was giving it up. This, for Morrie, was a blessing. He hated the place. He made another vow that he kept to the end of his life. He would never do any work that exploited someone else, and he would never allow himself to make money off the sweat of others. "What will you do?" Eva would ask him. "I don't know," he would say. He ruled out law because he didn't like lawyers, and he ruled out medicine because he couldn't take the sight of blood. "What will you do?" It was only through default that the best professor I ever had became a teacher. Good place to stop for today. Enjoy your day. Be well. Rest. Maybe go outside for some fresh air. And I will see you again soon. Take care.